Hello and welcome. My name is Mr. Cannell, and in this tutorial I'll be showing you how to create a double exposure image in the style of Antonio Mora, just like the one up on screens now. To make a start, you'll need a portrait and a landscape. To help you with taking your portrait for this, I recommend that you use a solid color as a background, as this will make selecting the silhouette of your model much easier. If you're a little bit worried about any shadows in the shot, what you can do is you can bring your model closer to the camera and further away from the background to avoid casting any shadows. But if that's a bit tricky to do, haven't got the space for it, you can also try repositioning your light source so that the shadows fall off camera. If this means that the lighting on your model is a bit dim and you'd like to get some back, you can try using something like a sheet of white paper or something else a little bit reflective to bounce that light back onto the model. You may also wish to consider asking your model if they have long hair to tie it up. This is to avoid any wispy bits of hair like the back of this model's neck from being all over the place and making it more difficult to get a good selection. For your landscape shots, I recommend that you have something like clouds, trees, tall buildings, anything else that's going to help break up the horizon. You'll also want to consider that a bright blue sky, although lovely, may not have all the areas of interest you want. So try and get some really lovely cloud layering in your shot. So to begin with, we're going to start with our portrait shot. Now we need to first unlock the layer, double click, press enter to confirm. And we're also going to want to increase our canvas size so that it's a little bit larger and we've got some space to work with. I'm going to go to Image, Canvas Size, and this little dialog box will pop up. I'm going to change the units from pixels to percentage, and where it says 100, I'm going to change that to 150, just to make it half again larger in both dialog boxes there. Press OK to confirm. And if I zoom out, you'll see we've got this added area on the canvas. Then I need to ensure that the mountain is also inside this portrait. To do that, I'm going to go to my mountain document, my landscape. I'm going to go down to the layer panel here and right click on the layer for the image. Go to duplicate layer. Go to this little dialog box and it will say destination document. I'm going to click on the drop down menu and change that so it's on the portrait. Press OK. And if I go back to my portrait, you'll see that the landscape has indeed transferred across and it's appeared on the top layer of our work here. Now, just before we get a bit confused, I'm going to change the name of a few things. So call that my original portrait and my original landscape. Now, with this landscape, it's a bit too big for the shot, so I need to resize it and reposition it. To do that quite easily, I can press Ctrl and T together with the landscape selected. Zoom out a bit, and you'll see this little box appear around the landscape image. I'm going to click and drag on one of these corners just to shrink it down, and if I click on the inside, I can pull it across by clicking and holding that down. I'm going to reposition it over the portrait. Now I can't see what's going on, so I'm going to change the opacity of that layer so I can see through, just enough that you can see where the elements in the landscape like the mountain and the clouds are in relation to your silhouette. I'm going to reposition it so it's going to be a little bit more pleasing. I quite like the curve of this mountain as it goes up, following the jawline of this model. So I'm going to put it that way around. I'm just going to enlarge it slightly and then reposition again. I think that should be fine. Then once I'm happy, I'm going to press enter to confirm my selection. I'm going to go back to the opacity slider in the layer panel and just bring that back up. Now I'm going to hide my landscape by pressing the little eye icon down in the layer panel next to my landscape layer. Then I'm going to reselect my original portrait layer, zoom in a little bit tighter. Now to make the transition a little bit easier between the two images, I'm going to desaturate this image. Now you can do that with adjustments, going to hue and saturation and dropping the saturation all the way down, but I'm going to use a simpler tool, so I'm going to delete that hue and saturation layer, and instead I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, and select Desaturate, and that will desaturate the image without clogging up my layer panel just here. Now, with this image selected in the layer panel, I'm going to use a selection tool, object selection tool, and if you click and hold on that, you'll get a number of different options that come up. Some you might prefer. Try them out, see which one works best, but in this case I'm going to use object selection tool. I'm going to click and drag around my model, and that should give me a really nice selection quite quickly. Just going to zoom in, holding the Alt key down, and there's a little bit of white that I don't want around the lips, so I'm just going to use another selection tool. I'm going to use magnetic lasso, hold down the Alt key and click and just follow around the edge there, just to remove unwanted bits. That's by holding down the Alt key. I can do that. Just going to zoom out, holding the Alt key and scrolling the mouse wheel out, and just have a little look around by holding the spacebar down so I don't lose my selection, to see if there are any other areas that I don't want in my selection. So there's a little bit at the top, holding down my Alt key and clicking and dragging with that selection tool. You'll know that you are removing the elements by holding the Alt key, as a little minus symbol appears next to the cursor. Spacebar again, click and drag. I'm just going to get this little wispy bit of hair at the back of her neck as well. And there we go. Selection made. Zooming all the way out again with the Alt key. Now I've got a good selection of my silhouette. I'm going to press the Control and J keys together whilst my original portrait layer is selected, and that will create another layer with just the selected elements inside it. So if I hide my bottom layer, my original portrait, you'll see the checker work area. It's just the face and silhouette selected now. Now it seems a little strange. I'm actually going to create another background separate from the portrait and the landscape. Even though we've just removed the background from the portrait, bringing another one back in is going to make it easy to get some blends between the landscape and the portrait, but having it separate is going to make it really easy to have great control over it. To do that, I'm going to go down to the new adjustment layer here. It's a little circle icon. Click on that, and then choose solid color. As you can see, it's come up with white, as white was my main color selected. If I press OK, and that's appeared at the top of our color fill. So I'm going to click and drag that layer down below my silhouette. If I hide that, you can see it's really easy to just change that and play around with it. Then I'm going to go to my original landscape layer at the top, unhide it, and with your layer, your landscape layer selected, I'm going to hover over the image in my silhouette copy, and then I'm going to hold down the Control key, and you'll notice what the cursor changes. So a little marquee tool, a little box with dotted edge appears. Whilst that dotted edge is up, if you click on that image, you'll get a selection of your silhouette appear on screen. Now if I add a layer mask by going to the bottom of the layer panel, at the bottom next to FX and the little circle icon we've just used, there's a circle inside a rectangle that says add layer mask. If you hover over it, click on that, and it will create this copy just here. I'm now going to use the brush tool inside this new layer mask that we've created to bring back some of the face. You'll notice this layer mask, the areas that are black are hidden, are parts of this landscape that are hidden, and we only see the areas that are in white. So if I use the brush tool by clicking on the brush icon in the toolbar, or pressing B for brush, I'll get a little circle appear for my brush. I'm then going to make sure that my color that's selected is black, and I want a nice smooth blend. So I'm going to go up to this top bar here and change the opacity of my brush tool So it's around about the 30% mark, maybe a little bit lower. Try 20%. Then making sure that my layer mask is selected and not the image on my landscape layer. So this, at the moment, the landscape layer is selected with this white little border. If I click on the layer mask and make sure that the layer mask is the one I'm using, with the layer mask on that layer selected, I'm then going to go over to the face and just start clicking in places. Remember, this is working at about 20%, so a few clicks will be needed to get it back to full strength. Just a couple of clicks, and we start blending and hiding the landscape on that part of the layer mask. It's a nice, quick, easy way of getting nice, delicate blends that we have a much greater control over. Now, since we've started to combine these two layers, it's worth bringing a bit of that background color from the landscape into our actual background. Now, to do that, if you click on the color fill layer, have that selected, and then just double click on this first image in the color fill layer to change its color. And you should end up with this dialog box come up for your color picker. To make sure that you are selecting the colors you want, select all layers in the sample section. This will mean that you can sample from all the different layers that are currently visible. I'm going to select the sky from my landscape here, and you'll see that it changes accordingly. Press OK to confirm if you're happy, or you can click elsewhere to change that as you wish. But I quite like that, so I'm going to keep it around that color. Pressing OK to confirm. Now, with my brush tool selected, I'm going to change the color to white. Make sure that my layer mask is selected. Zoom in tighter, holding space, maneuvering so I've got a better area to work with. And what I'm going to try and do now is use the white on my brush to blend this edge, top edge, in with the background. So bring back some of the landscape image that we see that's currently cut off by the layer mask. I'm going to change my opacity to something like 20% for that. And I'm just going to go around and gently click along that edge. And you'll start seeing a nice soft blend with my background start to appear. I'll go through just to get rid of that edge. As I get round to areas that I want it to stay quite sharp, I'm going to right click, change the size of my brush so I can get in a little bit tighter in those areas, like so. It doesn't need to be too much. Now, if you end up with any unwanted areas, press the X key to swap over to black and just go over and blend those back out again. So you end up with something that looks a little like this. Now, I would like to see some more of the cloud layer and blend even further than what we currently have. And to do that, I want a bit more control. I'm going to start by duplicating my landscape layer by pressing Control with it selected, pressing Control and J together, like so. Now, nothing's happened because it's an exact copy, but when I don't want this layer mask, so I'm going to select it, right click and delete it, and all of a sudden our landscape reappears. Now, I want this to be a more interesting blend and play around with it a bit more. So in order to get a more sort of faded blend happening, I'm going to use the blend mode option. So where it says normal in the layer panel, just going to, and with my copy selected, I'm going to select a new blend mode. Now, blend modes are great because they interact with all the different layers. I like using lighten it for this particular thing we're going to be doing. The screen's a bit too bright, but lighten will identify any of the areas that are sort of brighter than the background color or the layers below it, and it will reveal them. So I'm going to use the lighten tool now, and you'll see that we've got some lovely cloud layers coming through, but that's too much and it hides parts of the face. So in order to get rid of that, I'm going to hold down the Alt key and press the layer mask button again. Now, by holding down the Alt key, we change the default color from white to black. So right now everything's hidden from that landscape copy. But we're going to bring it back same way we brought back parts of the face and smooth that edge out. So it's black there. To reveal elements of that layer, we need to swap over to white. I'm going to increase the size of my brush to make it quite large, and make sure my opacity is down quite low. And with that layer mask selected, I'm going to start clicking and bringing back parts of that background. And this just makes it easier to pull back some of those items of background. There we go. Just like that. We can go up to the face a little bit too. A few clicks and we get some areas of interest going on. We don't want too much though, so I'll get rid of that with swapping it over to black and hiding it again. Now we could call it done there, but we might want to just make sure that our face is staying the same tone if we've gone over any parts. Then what we can do is, if we select our silhouette, press Ctrl and J with our silhouette selected, duplicate that layer 1 copy and move it all the way to the top, and then change that to lighten. Now, the reason for doing this is not only to bring back parts of the edge, but we're going to get some of the definition in the face back on top of our original landscape. And it's going to add that extra dimension to the landscape so it doesn't appear completely flat. But we do need to hide certain elements so we get that lovely landscape appearing through the skin again. So to do that, I'm going to add a layer mask and make sure my brush is selected to black. Get up my opacity to about 40% and just go over that layer and just hide certain elements. And you'll see that we still have some of the definition from our model in there. But what we're looking for, I change my cursor so it's easier to see, is this sort of line here where we get that lovely highlight from the jawline coming in and intersecting with the mountain. And we get little shines on the shoulder there, and these lines as they come across the chest. Just little bits of definition in the human form so that breaks up these areas of the mountain image. And there we go. We have something akin to Antonio Mora. Now we could stop there, but we probably want to crop our image so that the focus is drawn back to this area of sky and the face. So to do that, I'm going to use the crop tool, just C on your keyboard, and just click and drag these edges, lock it to the bottom there, and reposition the edges so it makes a more appealing image. Now for me, I like it, if my model is looking off to the left, I like to have a bit of space to the left so it looks like they're gazing out at something. If we bring it in a bit too close to their face, A, we lose all the fun details that we've added, but B, there's also, it looks like they're looking at something that we can't see, whereas if we put it across, or it looks like they're exiting the shot even, sorry. If we pull it across, there's a bit more going on, a bit more interest, and we have this lovely cloud layer bringing our eyes over to the portrait itself. And you can use these intersecting lines that appear as your rule of third lines to help you arrange your composition a bit more cleverly. I quite like leaving this space devoid, as I said before, so it looks like our model's looking into it. Press enter to confirm, and there you go, one Antonio Mora edit. Now you could do something even further. You could go even further. This is absolutely fine for an Antonio Mora edit, but if you wanted to go that little stage further and bring everything together, you can add an adjustment layer. We can make everything black and white. So everything's black and white now, and add another one with a hue and saturation layer. And I'm going to click this little button here, colorize. Hey, all of a sudden we've added the same kind of tint to the whole shot, I'll bring this in line with the mountainous theme. I'm going to change that to a cool blue. And there you go. Other things that you can do to improve upon your image. And thank you very much for watching this Antonio Mora double exposure tutorial. I hope it helps you out. Any questions, please feel free to drop me an email. Take care.